The name Oscar Piastri was supposed to represent McLaren's future, a long-term project, a carefully nurtured champion, and the driver who would lead the team into a new era. Just before the 2025 season began, McLaren locked him down with a contract until 2028, a move celebrated as one of the smartest decisions in the paddock. At the time, few could have predicted just how quickly that decision would turn from security into tension, because what followed in 25 wasn't just a championship fight, it was a psychological turning point. Piastri led the World Championship longer than any driver that season. He carried McLaren through its most dominant phase, built a 3-4-point lead, and stood on the brink of history. Yet by the time the dust settled, it was Lando Norris lifting the trophy. And now, as 22-6 approaches, evidence suggests that Piastri is no longer blindly loyal. He has finally set a deadline for his future. And what's emerging now has fans asking a dangerous question. Is this McLaren's second betrayal of their own golden boy? Before we dive in, make sure to smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss out on any of our latest videos. The story of Oscar Piastri's future cannot be separated from what truly happened during the 2025 Formula One season. On paper, it looks like a breakthrough year. 7 Grand Prix victories, long stretches leading the championship, and a McLaren resurgence that delivered another constructors' title. But beneath the statistics lies a far more complex and uncomfortable narrative, one that may ultimately define where Piastri is in 2027. Piastri entered 2025 not as McLaren's undisputed number one, but as a rising force. Yet by the opening phase of the season, he had become the benchmark. He led the World Championship for 189 days, built commanding gaps over both Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, and looked increasingly comfortable under pressure. After 15 of the 24 races, he was 34 points clear of Norris and a staggering 104 points ahead of Verstappen. At that moment, the title seemed not only possible, but inevitable. Then came Monza. McLaren's decision to instruct Piastri to hand second place back to Norris at the Italian Grand Prix may go down as one of the most pivotal radio calls of the season. Publicly, it was framed as a strategic necessity. Privately, many believe it marked the beginning of Piastri's unraveling. Drivers speak often about momentum, confidence, and trust, and Monza appeared to fracture all three. From that weekend onward, Piastri's sharp edge dulled. His results became erratic, and the calm assurance that defined his early season began to fade. The situation deteriorated further in Austin. A sprint race collision between Piastri and Norris ended with McLaren placing the blame squarely on the Australian. Whether justified or not, the optics were damaging. For a driver who had carried the team for much of the year, being publicly singled out sent a powerful message, one that did not go unnoticed by fans or paddock insiders. Singapore only added fuel to the fire. When Norris clashed wheels during an aggressive overtake for P3, McLaren chose not to intervene decisively. To many observers, it felt like a continuation of a pattern. When margins were tight and tensions high, Piastri was the one expected to absorb the consequences. This context is critical to understanding why questions about Piastri's future have intensified. Despite signing a long-term contract until 2028 just before the 2025 season, that deal is believed to include a release clause allowing him to leave at the end of 2026. And crucially, Piastri has now decided when he will consider activating it. Reports suggest that Piastri and his manager, Mark Webber, will wait until the middle of the 26th season before making any definitive decisions. This timing is deliberate. The 22.6 regulations represent the biggest technical reset in modern F1 history. New power units, revised aerodynamics, and a complete shift in performance hierarchies. For a driver of Piastri's caliber, committing before seeing which teams master this new era would be reckless. McLaren understand the risk. Losing Piastri would be more than losing a driver. It would be losing the foundation of their long-term project. That is why the team is already assessing contingency plans, including interest in Ferrari's Charles Leclerc should the unthinkable happen. Ferrari, meanwhile, are watching closely. Fred Vasseur reportedly sees Piastri as a natural leader for the Scuderia's next chapter, particularly with uncertainty surrounding Lewis Hamilton's future beyond 2026. A direct seat swap with Leclerc, or even a new pairing in red, is no longer fantasy. It is a scenario being quietly discussed within the paddock. However, Ferrari's historical instability remains a concern for Piastri, and he wants proof that Maranello can finally adapt successfully to a regulation overhaul. Red Bull cannot be ruled out either. If Max Verstappen triggers his own release clause, available if he falls outside the top 2 in the standings, Piastri instantly becomes one of the most valuable assets on the grid. A Verstappen exit would reshape Formula One overnight, and Red Bull would not hesitate to pursue a driver capable of leading them into the new era. Publicly, McLaren CEO Zak Brown has done everything possible to project unity. His praise of Piastri has been emphatic, describing his 2025 campaign as unbelievable and highlighting his maturity, professionalism, and rapid evolution into a title challenger. Brown insists that McLaren always knew they had a star, but Formula One history teaches us a brutal lesson. Kind words do not erase strategic decisions, and for many fans, the lingering question remains unresolved. In 2025, Piastri gave everything for the team, sometimes at the expense of his own championship ambitions. When the season ended, it was Norris wearing the crown. Now, as 2026 approaches, Piastri is no longer just racing rivals. He is evaluating loyalty, ambition, and whether McLaren truly see him as their future or merely a tool used when convenient. And that is why his decision may define the next decade of Formula One. So now the question hangs over Woking like a storm cloud. Was 2025 a necessary sacrifice, or the first chapter of McLaren's second betrayal of Oscar Piastri? And when the dust settles in 2026, will Piastri still be wearing papaya, or will he be leading a new era at Ferrari? Or even Red Bull? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What made the Monza decision even more damaging was not just the loss of points, but the signal it sent internally. Formula One drivers operate on razor-thin margins of trust. Every radio call, every strategic instruction becomes part of a larger psychological contract between driver and team. For Piastri, being asked to surrender track position at the peak of his championship control subtly shifted that contract. It suggested that, when the pressure was highest, McLaren's instincts leaned toward Norris as the safer long-term bet. Inside the paddock, several rival engineers quietly noted how rare such a call was given the championship context at the time. Piastri was leading the standings, controlling the race, and driving with authority. Team orders in that scenario are usually reserved for moments of absolute necessity. Instead, the call at Monza appeared preemptive, almost protective, less about maximizing the championship and more about managing internal hierarchy. From that point forward, Piastri's body language began to change. Media appearances grew more guarded. Radio communications became shorter, more restrained. While Norris appeared increasingly empowered, Piastri was left to recalibrate not just his driving approach, but his relationship with the team itself. These subtle shifts often go unnoticed in result sheets, but within elite motorsport, they are often the first indicators of a long-term fracture. History shows that championship campaigns are rarely lost in one moment. They erode. Confidence leaks away through decisions that seem minor in isolation but devastating in accumulation. Monza was not the loss of the title, but it may have been the moment Piastri realized that being McLaren's fastest driver did not necessarily mean being McLaren's priority.